What is going on, everybody? This is the Reformation Keegan, and I'm here today with a really cool analysis because we went back in the archive and we have Daredevil battling Jack Murdock. So, this is a story about Jack Murdock's career as a boxer and a story about him as a father to the man that we'll eventually know as Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil. So this was written in 2007, specifically from June to September. 4 issues, and I believe that Zeb Wells does a perfect job at writing this story because with 4 issues, you have a limited frame, but it's a good thing because I think a comic writer's best friend is constrained writing. And I say that because there are comic writers that write so much within a panel and on one page that you can't really take it all in because it feels like a bunch of words are being thrown at you. It feels like you're being written to, if that makes sense. It's like when somebody's talking at you and kind of holding your hand throughout the whole way. Sometimes the reader just wants to interpret things for themselves. And I think he does this perfectly, especially with Jack and Josie's relationship, where Josie sees the good in Jack. And Jack is a good person deep down, but Jack's trying to find that good within himself because of the dirty dealings that he's done with the Fixer. One thing that I want to make clear is that this is a story about creation. And what I mean by that is creating the character of Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil. Even though Daredevil has been an established character for many, many years and even decades before this story in 2007, this is giving you a glimpse of what Matt went through as a child. And yes, we already have the story of tragedy when Matt ends up saving the man from getting hit by a car and he ends up losing his sight. We have that, and that's retold in here a bit just to educate the audience. However, we get to see how Jack thinks of his son. Because at this time, Matt is a younger kid and somebody who never really stood up for himself until he stood up to his father. And then when he stood up to his father, who was drunk, he ended up getting smacked. And he got smacked, and not just because of this, but even before, we see that Jack views Matt as weak. And he views Matt as weak, so in turn, he feels like he has to be weak when he has to throw the fight, his dream fight at Madison Square Garden for the Fixer. He thinks he has to be weak like his son. And the thing that Jack does, and this is coming from somebody who's in combat sports basically, is we equate physicality to toughness. And if you have a lack of physicality, that's perceived as weak. But what Jack doesn't realize until eventually later is that his son is physically and mentally stronger than he ever thought he would be. So when Jack is getting beat up by Slade and the rest of the gang for the Fixer, there's a man in a balaclava, and that man is his son. And Matt is still really young at this point. But when Jack sees the black eye that Matt has, he realizes that Matt was the one that saved him. Because there was a point in that fight where Jack mentions something about a black eye. So he kind of foreshadowed to the reader that Matt was going to be the one to take the reins from his dad. And I think that's beautifully written. It was beautifully written by Zeb Wells. I really enjoy this story because it gives you a sense of pathos. It's the emotional effect on the reader. And weakness is almost an illusion. Weakness is something that I think in our human consciousness we don't really understand, yet we think we do. And I think that's what Zeb Wells was trying to tell us here, was that weakness is subjective. It's not just physical, it's not just mental. There is something else about weakness that human consciousness has not been able to fathom yet. And I don't know if we ever will. But weakness is something that can be perceived, even acted upon, but not necessarily understood. And Jack Murdock, because of his background in boxing and in combat sports, and even with his affiliations with the Fixer, views weakness from a one-dimensional point of view. Even with Josie, he doesn't really want to let her in. And he doesn't want to let her in on the fact that he thinks of himself as less than because he has to take a dive. Because if he doesn't, himself and Matt are at a very high risk of being killed. And the ending of this is very poetic. And if you haven't read this, I'm sorry if I'm spoiling it, but I think if you are going to probably watch these analyses, I would read the story first, because I'm going to talk about the ending right now, because the ending is very important. We see Jack Murdock basically release as he's about to get shot. And he didn't want his son to see him weak. So what he does is he wins the fight against the Fixer's wishes. And he also felt guilty because Josie bet all this money on Jack winning. And he was at the point in his life, because of his depression, even his alcoholism, which he tried to abstain from, was that he felt there was nothing left. And once he knew that Matt could take care of himself, there was really no other purpose for him to live, because he wanted to protect Matt. Now he doesn't need to protect Matt, because Matt, at his young, ripe age, is protecting him. Because Matt is still a teenager at this point. And Matt is able to kick the asses of this gang. So Jack almost goes to a point of nihilism where there's no purpose. So when he's getting beat up, he's laughing, because he knows, yeah, you can kill me. I don't really care if you kill me. I kind of want to die. And my son's going to be able to take care of all of you. So the ending with just the noise in the onomatopoeia, fantastic, because you get the point. Yes, the gunshot happened, but now you're thinking, okay, Jack Murdock served his purpose. But now what's Matt going to do? Especially if you haven't read a lot of Daredevil. If you really just read this is like a prequel. So if you just read this, you're going to think, man, I wonder how Matt would take care of the Fixer, or I wonder how Matt's going to react. And yes, he's going to be upset, but is this a point for him to become Daredevil, to become the lawyer that he wanted, which eventually Jack connected the dots with the stick and wanting to be a lawyer? He saw through all of that and realized after, when the guy in the balaclava saved him, that it was his son. It all ties in together, and it's beautifully written. So it's a 4-issue miniseries. It's very easy. You can read this in under an hour, probably. It's not long, because Zeb Wells' prose is very well laid out, where you don't have a whole bunch of dialogue clogging up the panels. Especially because I think people write dialogue just to write dialogue. Zeb Wells makes his dialogue mean something. And he makes the internal monologues mean something. So, to me, I highly, highly advise that you read Daredevil, Battlin, Jack Murdock. And honestly, you can read this without reading any other prior Daredevil. Because, like I said, this is almost like a prequel, where this is still Matt Murdock as a young child. And they tell you, Zeb Wells tells you about the tragedy that causes him to go blind in this story. So you're still getting educated. To me, very well done. I mean, I might even read this again at some point, just because I enjoy it that much. And one of the other things too that I want to mention quickly is we get a bit of the backstory of his mother, Maggie. And she turns her life over to Christ as a nun to basically renounce her sins. And this leaves Jack Murdock almost despondent. And I think Jack Murdock's despondency at the end of the day is what creates Daredevil. Because I think without the story of Jack Murdock, you don't get the Man Without Fear. Because Jack Murdock lived in fear of himself. And then when he got to release that fear, right before he got shot, and knew that Matt was in his own hands, well, Daredevil became created because Jack had the fear. He released that fear. And now Matt doesn't have to live necessarily in the past. Matt can live in the future and not just worry about vengeance, but justice. And when you're dealing with justice and you want it, fear becomes secondary. So that's my analysis on Daredevil, Battlin, Jack Murdock. Let me know what you think. If you've read this story, let me know. Let me know your thoughts. I'm really interested to see what you all think, because I think this is a really, really tremendous story. Dare I say, a bit underrated. And I think this is one that anybody should read. If you're a comic fan, this is something you can read. And if you can access this, this could even, like I said before, be one of your first Daredevil stories. So that is that. But let me know what you think. Please leave a comment. Please subscribe. Hit the like button. Let's get these videos out there. I have a lot of fun doing them, and I want to do more soon. I'm thinking about doing Old Man Logan at some point, as well as All of Invincible. But All of Invincible might be a bit of a longer video, depending. So let me know if that's of interest. And most of all, once again, I'll say, please hit the subscribe button. Please subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 by the end of 2026. If we can, I become a YouTube partner and I can put out more and better content for you going forward. So please consider, and I'll see you soon.